It's Friday night. It's the preview show. It's the No Nay Never podcast.
Hello and welcome to the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. I am your compere for this evening, Natalie Bromley, but joining me as ever is the main man himself, the boss, the king of stats, Dave Roberts, Statman Dave. Hello.
Hello, Natalie. Good to be back after we've missed a few matches. We didn't do Manchester United or Norwich, did we?
We didn't do Manchester United, and do you know what? I've just realised that we were supposed to do Manchester United and I didn't record. Oh my God, Dave, I'm so sorry. I've just realised. When I was sat there, I was thinking we've only missed one. We only missed the Norwich game, but of course. I'm so sorry. Oh my God. You're gonna have to put me in detention, I think. 50 lines for me, thou shalt not play truant from the preview show.
I'll put you in Kitely Corner.
Hey, no, Kitely Corner is not a punishment. That's a great place to be. How have you been? And how did you enjoy the FA Cup weekend?
Yeah, a bit of a letdown, really, wasn't it? After the two fantastic wins in the league, Manchester United on the back of Leicester, hopes were high going into Saturday against Norwich, and we didn't quite. We didn't perform to the level we know we're capable of. And Norwich deserve the win on the day, so good luck to them in the next round. But it's not going to be us 2 matches away from Wembley. It's them.
I know. I was really gutted. I know I harp on about this all the time on the podcast, but I'm so desperate for this team, especially, to have a decent cup run and just for the fans to give something to cheer about. And we had the ability to beat them at the weekend. I'm gonna say actually, I was quite surprised at how strong Norwich performed, and that's not because they are incapable of that level of performance, but more that I expected them to rest pretty much everybody and really concentrate on trying to survive in the league. But they were very positive. We were nearly 1-0 down after 10 seconds on the clock, and they were just better than us in every single area. And I'm not being funny. If they could get somebody who could put the ball in the back of the net, it would have been 3-0 down at half time. But you're right, Dave, it was not to be. It's another year now where all of our eggs are in the Premier League survival basket. So I think with only one competition now to concentrate on, and with us being probably only 10 points away from safety, I would really like to see us try and consolidate everything now and start building plans for next season already, don't you think so? And of course, Dave, that is been very much improved by groundbreaking news just as we were coming on air. What's happened at Turf Moor, Dave?
We signed a player. Josh Brownhill's got the number 8 shirt, come from Bristol City. He's signed.
Oh no, sorry.
Signed on a 4.5-year deal with an option for another 12 months. So he's one for the long term.
I know. We did a thing, Dave. We did a signing. This is incredible.
We did.
I'm excited. So now if he's going to wear the number 8, are we supposed to sing Josh Brownhill? Josh Brownhill? Is that how it goes? Does he just always take the Dean Marnie chant but with a different word?
No, you've got to earn it.
That's true. They are big shoes to fill. Does anybody told him that? No pressure, young Josh, but that's Dean Marnie's shirt, and you must very much make sure you live up to the boss's shoes. Shoes, live up to his shoes. Fill his shoes. Shoes to fill. Something along those lines, Clarets fans. Let's move on. Let's move away from what's happened in the past and let's look ahead to the future. And before we get into this week's preview show and look ahead to Arsenal at home at the weekend, we have some quiz news to report. Now, in a previous show prior to the home game against Leicester, we asked you which former Burnley player and which future Burnley player scored Leicester City's goals when the Foxes won 2-0 at Turf Moor in the Championship in March 2014. Dave, what was your answer?
The correct answers were David Nugent and Chris Wood. I did ask you after the show. We went off air and you got David Nugent straight away, but you struggled to get Chris Wood. You need a few clues. Well, that was the answer to that one. Quite an interesting one with two Clarets, or a former Claret and a future Claret, scoring the goals. And following that, we didn't put out a preview show, as we said, for the Manchester United away game or for Norwich in the FA Cup for obvious reasons on the Norwich one, with having already played them and done all the material once this season. But I did tweet out some stats and facts in written form. and ended the threads with a couple of questions. So in case you're wondering, the answer to the last Burnley player to score a hat-trick against Manchester United at Old Trafford was John Kennelly. That was over 57 years ago. On the occasion of our previous win there, that was a 5-2 victory in September 1962, and thankfully we've won again since then, last Wednesday, which was a marvellous occasion. And then for the other question, I was asking for the other two Burnley players to score hat-tricks for the Clarets at Turf Moor, but not end up on the winning side. This was in addition to Peter Noble, who'd scored 3 goals in a 4-4 draw in a top-flight game against Norwich City in September 1975. And the answer to that were Gareth Taylor. He scored a hat-trick in a 7-4 defeat versus Watford in 2003 when Stan Turner was in charge. And Charlie Austin scored a hat-trick in a 3-3 draw against Sheffield Wednesday in 2012. So well done to everyone who knew the correct answers to any or all of those recent quiz questions. There were 3 in there. We'd had quite a few correct answers through, but too many to name.
Yeah, we did get quite a lot of answers this time. I think it helped that we pushed the question out on Twitter as well. I think we're going to start doing that every week because not everybody can listen to the previous show. Not everybody wants a double dose of No Nay Never every week. Some people, they can't help themselves. They want to listen to everything, but some people don't tune in for the previous show. So we will get those on Twitter and hopefully get some more answers.
Opposition stats.
So, Dave, let us move on to looking ahead to this weekend's game. And it is, of course, Arsenal at home, Sunday the 2nd of February. My goodness, how is it February already? At 2 p.m, we are live on Sky Sports. So, Dave, obviously this is our return fixture this season to playing Arsenal. So why don't you tell us what happened since we last met?
Yeah, well, despite winning the reverse fixture back in August, that was 2-1, another televised game. Arsenal have had a rather indifferent season by their standards and are currently level with Burnley on 30 points. The Gunners have only won 6 Premier League matches so far this season, compared with Burnley's 9, and have drawn an incredible 12 matches to date, which is more than any other team. There's probably never been a more congested middle of the table at this stage of the season. I know you touched on this in the main podcast, which was recorded last week. There's still several teams holding out hopes for a good run of results to push for European qualification, while still having the threat of relegation on their minds if they have a poor run in the next few weeks.
Do you think you'll need 40 points to survive this year, Dave? I do, because of just this congestion.
I think it depends. I think it depends on if West Ham have got a tough run of games. I think there might be some in there. It may well be that teams still do get stranded. I think there's a likelihood is that it's going to be pushing 40 points. But it's like anything. It depends on what happens in the next month or so.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just that there's the dominance of the traditional top 6 hasn't been there this year, the big 6, and already with City themselves have dropped more points than you would think they would do. But your likes of United, Chelsea, Arsenal, they're giving away points to the teams in the lower half of the league, which doesn't usually happen. Usually the traditional big 6 win pretty much most of the home and away games for those who aren't around them. So I think that's where my rationale is. So let's look again then at Turf Moor. What's Burnley's heaviest defeat?
In 1937, Burnley and Arsenal met at Turf Moor in an FA Cup 5th round tie. The visitors overwhelmed the Clarets that day and were 7-1 winners. And unfortunately, from a Burnley perspective, the evidence still exists on YouTube if anyone wants to go and look at it.
Oh dear. What about the biggest Burnley win then, please, Dave?
Well, we do have a couple of matches where we've beaten Arsenal at Turf Moor by a margin of 5 goals. But you've got to go back to the 1800s for a 6-1 FA Cup win in February 1896, and also a 5-0 league win. That was a second division match in September 1897.
And what about Burnley's last win?
Well, our last home win over Arsenal was a Carling Cup quarter-final tie in December 2008. 2 Kevin McDonald goals continued the Clarets' capital punishment run in that competition after we'd previously got past Fulham and Chelsea in the earlier rounds.
And what about last season? What happened then?
Well, Arsenal were the visitors to Turf Moor for the final Premier League match of the 2018-19 season. That was last May. And for once, they didn't require a last-minute penalty or a goal scored with a hand to take all 3 points. The Gunners won 3-1 with 2 goals from Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and 1 for Eddie Nketiah, who came on as a sub. Ashley Barnes scored Burnley's goal on that occasion.
Excellent. And do we have a different manager than the last time we played them?
We do, not for the first time this season. We've got a different manager in place. Since we played at the Emirates in August, Unai Emery has been replaced by 37-year-old Spaniard Mikel Arteta, who left his position as assistant coach at Manchester City to take over as manager at Arsenal.
Excellent, and he's going to be coming to Turf Moor and he's going to hate it. I love it. Okay, Dave, why don't we move on to some head-to-head stats?
Yeah, when we look at Burnley's overall home record against Arsenal, it stands at played 52, won 24, drawn 12, lost 19. It's a win percentage of 46.1%, and that's slightly below our overall home average win percentage of almost exactly 50%. When we look at top flight matches, home matches only, it's played 43, won 18, drawn 10, and lost 15. That's a win percentage of 41.9%. For Premier League matches played since 2009, Burnley have lost 4 and drawn just 1 of the 5 meetings to date at Turf Moor, although this is 1 point more than we've picked up on our 6 Premier League away visits to the Emirates in the same period.
Good stuff. Who's our referee then?
Chris Kavanagh, he's in charge at Turf Moor on Sunday. He's visited Turf Moor once already this season when Liverpool won 3-0 and went back to Merseyside with all 3 points. Although based on their season to date, we shouldn't really read too much into that. David Coote will be on VAR duty.
Excellent. And to finish off our preview then, and my new favourite feature, and the new one for the second half of the season, who are Arsenal's celebrity fans?
Celebrity fans!
Okay, well, among Arsenal's famous fans, these are just 7 names we've handpicked to mention this week. Newsreader Dermot Murnahan, former cricketer Phil Tufnell, author Nick Hornby, actress Jessie Wallace, who plays Cat Slater in EastEnders, singer and TV presenter Ella Jones, Jeremy Corbyn, and finally, Prince Harry. Now, I'm guessing that the football conversations in the royal household have been helping to take their minds off other matters in recent weeks. One final thing on that, do remember to keep a close eye on the away end to see them cheering on the Gunners this Sunday, if any of them are there.
Yeah, I'm going to go with no. And actually, I'm not having this. Aled Jones is an Arsenal fan.
Apparently so.
He's Welsh. There's decent Welsh teams, and there's flipping Cardiff and Swansea to start off with. So why doesn't he support them?
Who said celebrities can't be glory supporters?
Exactly, glory supporters. Support your unless he grew up in London or has lived in London for years and is now a Londoner. Then I forgive you and I apologise for not supporting a Welsh-eyed young Aled Jones. But if not, support your local team. And Prince Harry, I suppose, yeah, he kind of grew up in London, so maybe I'll let him off. And Dave, I can't believe you went through all of that and you didn't mention Piers Morgan.
Well, I said celebrities.
Oh, Dave's getting catty. I love it. Let's move on. What is going to be your miscellaneous stat of the week, please, Dave? Because I know you, and I know you don't just stop at the ordinary. You want to delve into that bank of stats and let us have something sparkling, please.
Statman Dave's stat of the week.
I've got a good one this week, I think. I tweeted this stat out earlier in the week, but for those of you who didn't see it, or even if you did, I think it's worth a repeat. Sunday marks exactly 1 whole year since Burnley last drew a match at Turf Moor in any competition. Ashley Barnes scored a late penalty to earn a 1-1 draw against Southampton on the 2nd of February 2019. But 12 months on, or 52 weeks, or 365 days later, we're still awaiting a draw in any league or cup games played at Turf Moor.
Oh, that's a good start of the week. I love it. Maybe this week's the week. Well, obviously, Dave's given us his stats prediction this week, and we'll come back to Dave in a minute to see what his thoughts are on the game. But in the meantime, we finally managed to book one on. I think it's about time we met our opposition.
Opposition View.
And I am very, very pleased to be joined this week by Dan Potts from the Same Old Arsenal podcast. Well, what can we say, Dan? Welcome to the No Nay Never preview show.
Good evening, Natalie. Thank you for having me on. Absolute pleasure to be here.
Oh, not at all. It's been a while actually since the No and Never fans have had an opposition fan on. We seem to have had some real trouble booking people, so we're very grateful. Why don't you start by telling us essentially how you think your season's gone? It feels like it's been a long season since we last played you, but it's also gone lightning fast. And of course, for you guys, has been the biggest change being your guy at the top with Unai Emery leaving and Mikel Arteta coming in. So why don't you essentially just bring our listeners up to date with how things are going on down at Arsenal?
Yeah, a fairly depressing start to the season, it must be said. I can't remember the last time I've seen Arsenal in such a mess, if I'm honest with you. A lot of our fans are extremely fickle. We have probably some of the most toxic fan base in the Premier League at times, it seems. But as far as our kind of fans are concerned at the moment, we're so grateful to see change at the club, because it was getting to the stage where we wanted to try and come away from the potential Man United stuff of getting rid of Ferguson and having 6 or 7 managers. And what we didn't want was to keep chopping and changing. We want to try and stay stability. At the same time, it was going so bad under Unai Emery, and we really couldn't see where we were going to get a win. And it was just draw after draw, loss after loss. And I think we kind of hit rock bottom, really. And then Mikel Arteta's obviously taken us over, installed a lot of confidence and put his faith in some of the young players who have really, really outshone. And we've started to play better. The performances are getting there. And although the results are not always going our way, we've definitely seen a huge improvement. I think on paper, our side is a good side. I think there's bang average players in certain positions, which unfortunately has let the sides down. And due to injuries, we're having to play some of those players. What I will say about our youth, we've got some fantastic talent in there. I think Matteo Guendouzi at 20 years old looks like he could be a fantastic player. Gabriel Martinelli and Bukayo Saka down that left-hand side at 18 years old. There's a lot to be kind of excited about in terms of potential. But for me, it's all about getting as high as we can up in this season, and all of our eggs now need to go into the Europa League, because that's our only route back into the Champions League. So the league, for me, I'm really not too bothered if we finish even outside of the Europa spot. I just want to go all out for the Europa League so that we can try and get ourselves back into the Champions League, because the problem with us, Natalie, at the moment is we're on a Champions League wage budget, and we're not a Champions League club. And to be fair, we don't deserve to be the way we're playing. So that's our biggest problem. We've got players on massive wages, and it is having a massive knock-on effect. So the sooner we can get into the Champions League, for us, the better.
Yeah, it must be quite difficult to see that season after season, and knowing full well that for a club that's historically always been run very well as a business, and you had those years where you had that very strict wage cap in place, and you did lose out on some really big signings just because there was a business model, obviously at a very different scale to the one that we have at Burnley, but there were some real similarities there with respecting that wage structure and respecting the business. And like you say, now if you've got some players who you've brought in believing that your Champions League slot was more secure than it has been, it doesn't take that many years to be away from that competition to feel those effects. I was quite interested, Dan, what you were saying then, and I'm going to pick up on this. I'm not going to give them too much airtime because they get enough, but it was interesting to hear you made it sound like there was almost a toxic atmosphere going through the clubs, and we see it, I think, more than anything coming out of the Arsenal fan TV, which at some point, particularly at I guess the low point of the club's feelings around when everything was going wrong, they almost became a caricature of themselves, and they were starting to make a real mockery of the club. Do you genuinely feel now that the changes have been made and Arteta's come in, and the Arsenal fan TV, there's a bit of a revolt against them in terms of the fans rejecting that toxic atmosphere that they're promoting, that actually you are genuinely starting to rebuild?
It's an interesting question, and I think it's one that I may answer honestly, but if I'm honest with you, I have a lot of friends that do go on Arsenal Fan TV. So a couple of them do join me on our podcast on the Same Old Arsenal. So if you watch it, you'll probably know the faces. My opinion on Arsenal Fan TV is it's a great idea. Why? Because it allows fans to have a voice, and that is what I believe fans should be, which is why we're on podcasts like
Yeah.
this one. What I will say about it is, in terms of the negativity, is what happens is people were tuning into Arsenal Fan TV when Arsenal lose,
Ah.
and it's not Arsenal fans that are watching it. So it's the Arsenal fans that are watching it and enjoying it when we win, or they enjoy the actual influencers on there, like the DT and the
Yeah,
Troops and the lead judges and the Claudes and the Ties. But what actually happens is we get West Ham and Tottenham and United and City and Chelsea fans watching it, thinking this is an absolutely hilarious channel. This because Arsenal fans are ranting and
yeah,
raving, and really what has then happened is a lot of people have got views from that and become famous from just ranting into a camera. And I think that's the side where perhaps the negativity gets frustrating with fans, because the fans then say, well, we're not in front of a camera. We're not the
yeah,
ones screaming. So I can see both sides. I personally believe that the way that Robbie Lyle has done it is fantastic, but there has obviously been some mistakes
yeah,
along the way, which I think he would probably hold his hands up and say, do you know what? Yeah, maybe I could have gone about things better with that. But as far as I'm concerned, the idea is correct. And we've seen other fan TV shows around from other clubs that have done something similar, but it hasn't hit off as much just because a couple of those characters are doing it just for views, and that is my honest opinion.
yeah. It's clickbait. It has become clickbait. That's really interesting. I'm really glad I raised that question because, of course, to the rest of us, we don't, we aren't the forum for Arsenal Fan TV. We're not going to tune in every single week because we've got our own fan content and we
Of
want
course.
to hear about our club. So you're right. The only exposure that non-Arsenal fans have to it are the clicks that get put on social media and the snippets that have been cleverly edited to direct traffic to make them a laughing stock. So no, I'm glad I raised that. So let's move away from something more positive because obviously you are driving that positivity among the fans and trying to get everything back to normal again. What about your new signing? Obviously, you've had some big new signing this week with Pablo Mari coming into the club. Is that the kind of positive signing you were looking for, or do you still think you need to do something more tomorrow?
It's a realistic signing, Natalie. We're in a bit of a mess financially. We haven't got the financial power of the Manchester Cities and the Chelseas of this world, and that comes back to what I said earlier about our wage budget just being so high. And to try and keep in with financial fair play rules, we are going to have to be realistic about our signings. We actually didn't spend much in the summer. A lot of people think we did. If you look at what we did in the summer, we actually spent around about £40 million. If you look at the net spend, the Pepe deal was actually 25 million because it's over a 5-year deal in instalments to Lille, because Lille are in so much trouble over in the French league that they accepted the 72 million over a period of about 3 or 4 years. So really, we didn't spend much money up front with that. We got money from Iwobi. We got El Neni and Mkhitaryan off the books, and we looked to actually sign the likes of Kieran Tierney for 25 million, Danny Ceballos on a loan deal. So really, we didn't actually do much in the summer. So when I look at the Pablo Mari deal, something about it excites me. I think Arteta and Edu have got together and thought we need a centre half. What's happening over in Brazil? They're at pre-season. He's 6'4", so he's got the height, he's got the presence. He's a left-footed centre back, which is something that Arteta has recognised that we lack. And I think that he has got the kind of ability, it seems, to be that ball playing defender. So certainly it's an area of frailty and weakness for Arsenal. But if I'm honest with you, Natalie, you could probably ask me this 15 years ago and I could say the same thing. We've been lacking a centre half and a defensive midfielder since Patrick Vieira and Sol Campbell left 15 years ago. And that is the honest truth. We've not quite managed to get it right in the terms of the style of player that Arsene Wenger was bringing in. He went from the Vieira and Gilbertos to the Fabregases, the Nilsons, Diabys, Cazolas, Wilshire's, Ramseys. They're all really lightweight, technically gifted, but they weren't really that presence that we need and we lack. And likewise at the back, apart from Lauren Koscielny, you can really name 15 or 16 defenders that have come and gone and not really taken the bull by the horns to get themselves into that Arsenal side and be a leader. And I think that's what we lack. Rumours a few years ago of us trying to go for Virgil van Dijk and N'Golo Kante, but refusing to do that. Our recruitment has been a huge issue because instead we bought the same season Skodran Mustafi and Granit Xhaka, who have just been completely and utterly poor players and poor signings for us. So I think recruitment's been an issue. Something does excite me about this because the last couple of signings that have been of the same ilk have been Gabriel Martinelli and Matteo Guendouzi, who have been fantastic for that kind of price tag. There's something about this that just excites me. It could not work. It is only a loan deal. So if it doesn't work, he just goes back to Flamengo. It's not a problem. There is an option to buy. In terms of your question about do we still need to do something? I think we do, but I don't know if we will get the positions we need. I still feel we need a defensive midfielder. It looks to me like we are going to try and buy Cedric Suarez from Southampton for backup because we've had issues at fullback with injuries. But apart from Suarez, it will be a real shock to me if anything else happens in this window.
Yeah, probably quite similar to what we're doing at the moment as well. Okay, let's move on then to this weekend's game. Now, certainly from the Clarets' perspective and moving this back towards the Burnley perspective, prior to 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago, things were starting to look really bleak at Burnley, and we were really struggling for form, and we were looking at some horrendous fixtures before we had a relatively easier run into the end of the season. But two, dare I say, unexpected results, beating Leicester at home and United away, both quite comprehensively, I would add as well, have put the Clarets season back on track a little bit. And we're currently, as you and I record this, Dan, is sat on 30 points. Now, I've been saying for most of this season, and our listeners have heard me say this, that I think this season you're going to need 40 at least to survive, just because I think the league's too tight. And I think that a lot of the traditional top six sides have cascaded too many points down to the bottom sides. You know, even the likes of City and yourselves and United, Chelsea are dropping points against sides outside the bottom six. So I think more points are dropping down to the bottom end of the table. And I think you'll need 40. So technically, we're only sort of 10 points away from safety, and it's it's the 30th of January now. Bearing that in mind, and bearing the fact that we are a different animal than we would have been maybe 2 weeks ago, two questions. Number one, what are you expecting from the weekend's game? And number two, what are you expecting about this Burnley side for the rest of the season? And we appreciate you're an Arsenal fan, you're not a Burnley fan, so...
Well, no, and the reason I respect Burnley is mainly due to your manager. I'm a huge fan of Sean Dyche. I think that he goes underrated in terms of what he's achieved at that club, and I think that a lot of fans that are perhaps neutral say that it's a bit of a boring old way and a bit of an old school way to play football. But what it is very, very hard to play against, and I've always found that a Burnley side under Sean Dyche is extremely physical. I'm expecting that on Sunday. If I'm honest with you, we have done well at your place the last few seasons. We've never ever beat you 4 or 5-0 at your place because it's a hard, tough place to go. Had a few nice results at the Emirates under Arsene Wenger, however, but that can happen at the Emirates, you know. When it comes to going to Burnley at Turf Moor, it's a real battlefield, physical, very, very hard. And I think that sometimes teams believe the best way to play Arsenal is to beat them up. And I think that's exactly what Sean Dyche's game plan will be, is to get in our faces, make it very difficult for us. The way that you work off the ball is very, very hard. And I think that we have improved under Arteta with that, but we will have to match you if we want to get anything out of the game. I believe, if you were to ask me what I think is going to happen, I think we are going to just about nick it. I'm actually going up all the way up to Burnley on Sunday to watch the game, and it's a real hard kind of atmosphere there. It's not a pleasant place to go for us. It's very like we're going onto the battlefield. It's a bit of a fortress there. So I've been there once or twice before and felt the same. It's never been an easy win. I think last time I went there, we won 1-0. Last season, or last 2 seasons, we've nicked it 2-1 in the very, very last minute from a penalty and actually a handball pretty much
let's
over the
not go
line a
down
couple of years ago.
that. That's still very tender
Yeah,
for Burnley
there we
fans.
go. Very sore. I imagine it's very sore still. But so what I'm trying to get at is it's never an easy game, and I think that it will be very much the same. And I'm going to go for to nick it 2-1, but I don't expect an easy game at all. Where I think you're going to be for the rest of the season, don't even think about relegation. That's not going to happen. You guys will not go down this season. I can assure you of that because of your manager's ability, and I do believe there's some quality in your side. I did a chat yesterday on our preview show and talked about you guys and some of the players that we mentioned. I will mention now if I may.
Of course.
I believe the partnership at the back. When I look at what we've got at the back, I would take Ben Mee and James Tarkowski both in our side and slot them into the Arsenal
Oh,
side. That's
wow.
how
I
much I
love
rate.
them.
Honestly, that's how much I rate them both as a partnership. I think individually they're great defenders, but as a partnership,
Yeah.
you guys must be extremely pleased because I really do rate them. I think they're great at the back. So they were my first mention. The other two players I'm going to mention, one of them I believe is injured, but I think he's fantastic, is Ashley Barnes.
Actually, I was going to say, I know which two players you're going to say, but yeah, go
on. Because I think him and the other player, Chris Wood,
Yeah.
are absolute nightmare to try and defend against. And I think that if we are going to have to watch out, it's going to be through set pieces because of the four players
Oh,
I've just mentioned.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I think that, and listen, I mean, Bournemouth the other night when we played, the one time they did score was the time they whipped it into the box, and I think that's what
Yeah.
you'll be doing all game, on Sunday. And Sean Dyche isn't silly. He's not going to come and start passing it round us because he knows that's the way we want to play it. He's going to make it very difficult for us, and he's going to say, let's throw some long balls into the box because this team are frail at the back. And I think that Chris Wood will be all over David Luiz and Socrates. I think you'll miss Ashley Barnes because he's a nasty little player to play against. He's a real.
Yeah.
So everybody would want him in a team.
But we've got Jay Rodriguez who's come in and he's starting to form quite a dangerous partnership with Chris Wood. And I think whilst he doesn't necessarily have the aerial threat and the niggling ability to get in defenders' faces that maybe Ashley Barnes does, he's probably more technically skillful on the ball. So if you put all of your eggs in one basket and start trying to defend against the aerial threat and the physicality of Chris Wood, you're going to give Jay Rodriguez way too much room. And look at that goal he scored against United out of nowhere.
I was just going to say that was a stunner, wasn't it? I mean, I always thought with Jay Rodriguez that perhaps he should have stayed at Burnley from the off, and I think he would have become more of a maybe even a legend with yourself because he was there at a young age. I can understand why he left.
Yeah, we had too many relegated. We were back in the Championship, and at that time he was being touted for England, and he was too good for us, and that was sort of around the first time we got promoted back in 2009, 2010, and I actually think he's better going away and trying something different. Certainly, he's more physical than he was when he left us. He was a kid. He was a 19-year-old lad when he left us. So. Yeah, it's an interesting one. So who's the final player? I know it is, but tell us who your final player is that you're worried about.
Well, the final player for me would be your England number one, my England number one. I think Nick Pope is an outstanding goalkeeper and always has been.
Oh, I didn't think you were going to say him. I thought you were going to talk about Dwight McNeil because that's what everybody talks about. That's interesting. Oh, yes, let's give Nick Pope some airtime.
Well, I listen. It's interesting you bring up McNeil because my colleague from Sam Arsenal yesterday he brought him up as a problem. My issue with McNeil, I like him. Don't get me wrong. I think he's dangerous. I don't see it consistently enough. However, saying that, I don't watch Burnley week in, week out, so maybe that's a harsh thing to say. But I did go through a stage of thinking, wow, this lad every week on Match of the Day, he's looking a hell of a skillful. But I don't see enough kind of goals from him. Perhaps he's creative. I don't know. You might be able to tell me different. But for me, I would take Nick Pope because I just think the guy has been very consistent. Best goalkeeper outside of the top six this season, in my opinion. Definitely ahead of Jordan Pickford in the England side if it was me as Gareth Southgate. And I don't think he gets enough credit. He's kind of, when he came on the scene, he was only thrown in because Heaton was injured. You actually got to one stage where you had Joe Hart and Heaton and Pope. And I thought, this is a bit harsh on Pope because I think he's the best out of the three. And I think now he's proven that the case to be true because I think he has been exceptional.
Yeah, I think a lot of Burnley fans were quite sad to see Heaton go in the summer, but I think it was the right call. I think longer term, Pope's a better keeper. I think Heaton is great, and he was probably a more of a natural leader. But I personally think that it was the right decision to make. Not everybody agrees. A lot of Burnley fans think we sold the wrong player, but I am definitely in camp Pope, and I would have him as number one as well. I think the problem is that. Jordan Pickford plays the exact kind of football that Gareth Southgate wants his defenders to play. Nick Pope doesn't fit that criteria. He doesn't play out from the back. He doesn't play that kind of fluid one-touch passing around the back five, and that's why I think he's not muscled his way in either. So.
That isn't always a bad thing, though, Natalie.
No, believe me, I'm not a fan of this ridiculous trend of passing. If you are the world's most, if you're the Liverpool defence, for God's sake, then fine, pass it around all you want. But you see the likes of Watford, or no offence, Watford fans, but do you know what I mean? You see that the teams that think now that they've got to play out from the back and they've just not got the ability to do it, and they're conceding the most horrendous goals from it. So yeah, it's my bugbear at the moment. Well, Dan, we usually finish off by getting a score prediction, but you've already said that you think that we're going to nick it 2-1.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
No, it's great. I'm just recapping there. Team None and Ever, of course, has got to back our boys, and I think I'm going to call it as 2-1 the other way. But either way, I am genuinely looking forward to this game. In our view, our heads are telling us that we'll get beat, but in our hearts, I think we feel like this may be the chance to try and get a win at Turf Moor against Arsenal. But either way, it's going to be a great game, and I'm really looking forward to it. Dan, thank you so much for coming on. Before you leave us, why don't you tell our Clarets fans where they can contact you?
Yeah, sure. Listen, I'm sure that you will want to come and talk to us about Arsenal and listen to Arsenal. I'm joking, of course. But if there is anybody that you know that's Arsenal fans, please get them over to the Same Old Arsenal podcast on YouTube and Same Old AFC on Twitter. If you do want to follow me on Twitter or listen to any more of my podcasts that I'm on, then it's at DanArsenal87. And thank you, Natalie. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, the pleasure's all been ours, Dan. Listen, safe travels on Sunday. Make sure you get here safely. Enjoy the game. And our top tip to you, which we say to all of our away fans, do not leave Burnley without sampling a Benny and Hot. We will leave you with that.
A Benny and Hot.
Benny and Hot.
Lovely.
And I want a picture. You want to tweet None and Ever with a picture? We want to see it. That has been Dan Potts. Dan, thank you so much, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Thank you.
So there we are, Dave. We've just heard from our Arsenal fan of this week. What's your heart telling you about the game at the weekend? I mean, obviously we've had the disappointment of the Norwich game, but we've just come off the back of two ridiculously good results against top 6 sides in the Premier League. And given the up and down form of Arsenal, and in some respects, the kind of average side that they're playing at the moment, we're going to fancy our chances, aren't we?
Yeah, sometimes it's a good time to play teams, sometimes it's a bad time. I think it was a pretty good time to play Manchester United. They've been on an indifferent run. So coming up against them at the time we did, that perhaps worked in our favour. And I think it might be the same again for Arsenal this Sunday. Again, we're going to have to be on our game really on Sunday to get a result against them. But there's no reason why we can't go out there and get at least a draw and maybe push on and get a victory. I mean, we've had two really good matches against two top sides. Arsenal, they're not in the top 6 now. They're level on points with us. They've drawn far too many games this season. Their form's been very indifferent. It could well be a really good time to play them. So if we're ever going to get a win against them, and we haven't had one in the Premier League since we got promoted in 2009, it might be the time. This Sunday might be the occasion to do it.
Yeah, I've got a really good feeling for this weekend. I really do. I feel like now is the time to play them, and I feel like, which I just don't know, because we're at Turf as well and confidence is riding high. I really do feel it. What would you do, Dave? Would you play our new superstar central midfielder and give maybe Corky a rest?
I think there's very little chance of that. I think he'll be. It's going to take probably a few weeks at least to assess him and get him Dyche fit. I think it may well be bit parts between now and the end of the season. He's certainly one for the future. Not saying he won't play, but judging on past records, I would expect us to put out pretty much the side we did against Manchester United.
Yeah, that was a very good politician's answer, Dave, but I was very specific when I said not what you think Dyche will do, but would you play him? If you were Dyche, would you play him? Given how slightly pedestrian I think our midfield's got and how tired players like Jack are, would you put him in there and let him play?
No.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Short and sweet. No.
Yeah, excellent. Would you look to bring him in quickly, or would you basically not even try him for this season? What's your thoughts on that?
No, I think this is certainly, well, hopefully got a role to play. We wanted to push players on, so we're buying players from the point of view of they're coming in and they need to be pushing the players that have got the shirts at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think the players that played, the team that played against Manchester United, perhaps deserve to start against Arsenal and take it from there. And then if we're seeing performance levels drop as the season goes on, then we've got an option to to bring a new signing in and freshen up the side and give a bit more competition.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing, actually. Maybe it's just a case of getting the next, say, 3 wins that we need under our belts to get it. And then once we've got a bit of freedom and we know that we've probably secured Premier League football for next year, then have the freedom to play him. And you never know. And who else we might bring in tomorrow as well. Still got another day of the transfer window yet. This is incredible.
Fantasy Premier League update.
Okay, Dave, we'll finish off this week's episode with a look of the much coveted and much loved Fantasy Football League. It's been a while since we had a look at who's doing what, so why don't you talk us through the top of the table and who the movers and shakers are?
Yeah, well, there hasn't been too much movement at the top of the No Nay Never League. Bennett Howarth, John Sutcliffe and Tull Paul are occupying the top 3 places, although the gap between first and second widened to 25 points, as Bennett Howarth was also one of the week's highest scoring managers with 99 points. No other manager in our league, however, scored more than 107 points, picked up by Daniel Lord in game week 24. All of the top 10 teams in our league are within 95 points of the lead still, so there's plenty to play for and over 3 months to do something about it. Richard Steele is still leading the way in the No Nay Never Podcasters Mini League, as he has been for most of the season, and thanks to an impressive 87 points in game week 24, you, Natalie, have lifted your Dingle Bells team out of the bottom 3. Did you play your free hit by any chance?
No! What's a free hit? I don't even know what a free hit is.
There's 1 week where you can have unlimited transfers. It's temporary. You can basically bring in as many players as you want, I think within the cost constraints, and play that team, and then the week after it reverts back to the team you had previously.
No.
But you can only use it once a season.
I didn't know.
You don't know that?
I haven't even looked at it. I'll be honest with you. I don't even know how I scored 87 points because I haven't tweaked with it since August. But yay! Oh my goodness! I'm joking. I'm not excited, listeners. I'm having a bit of a coughing fit. Yeah, I don't know how that's happened, but yay me! Out the bottom 3. Out the bottom 3. What about the dream team then, please, Dave? I've got all excited. I'm going to have to put myself on mute for a mile. I'm getting all giddy.
Well, Burnley's Chris Wood was among the players in the dream team for game week 24, although he's currently trailing Nick Pope by 3 points in the race to be Burnley's high-scoring player. Nick Pope is now on 99 points, and Chris Wood is now on 96. To date, the highest-scoring players for each position across all teams are as follows. Goalkeeper position, the highest-scoring goalkeeper is Sheffield United's Dean Henderson with 101 points, so only just ahead of Nick Pope. In defence, Liverpool's Trent Alexander-Arnold is the highest-scoring defender with 140 points. In midfield, Manchester City's Kevin De Bruyne with 159 points is the highest midfielder, and that's also the highest-scoring player overall. And then in attack, Leicester City's Jamie Vardy with 150 points is the highest scoring forward.
Excellent stuff. Well, we're going to be back for another Fantasy League update next preview show as we keep you updated on the race to win that coveted title. There are no prizes, but it's just the glory and the pride of knowing that you are the best of the best No Nay Never listeners. So we will be back. So keep it going. Keep tinkering with those teams. Use that free pass thing that Dave mentioned before, whatever that was. And yay, go fantasy footballers.
Statman Dave's quiz question.
Finally, Dave, we're going to leave our listeners this week with the much loved. I think this might be nearly as much loved as the Fantasy Football League. Fantasy Football League or quiz show? What do we think is more popular? I'm going to go quiz show. Why don't you tell our listeners what this week's quiz question is, please?
Okay, this week's quiz question is: Ashley Barnes scored for Burnley against the Gunners at Turf Moor last season. But prior to that, who was the only other Burnley player to score for Burnley against Arsenal in a Premier League match at Turf Moor?
We've only scored 2 goals against Arsenal at Turf since we've been in the Premier League.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes.
I don't know who this is. It must be somebody. How have we only scored 2 goals? So it must have been. It can't be in this current. Is it? I'm going to guess Danny Ings or somebody like that. Like just from the first wave, like the 2014 crop before we got relegated and went up as champions. I don't think it's from I don't think it's from the 2009 squad because we were rubbish. And I don't think it's from the current ones because I just don't think it is. So I'm going to guess it's from around the 2014 squad. So I'm going to guess Danny Ings. So there you go. See if you can see if you agree with me, listeners, or you can do better if I've got it wrong. Dave, how do our listeners submit their answers?
The best way to get in touch is, first of all, to send us a direct message on Twitter. That's @NoNayNever. You could also email us, podcast@nonaynever.net, or you can reply to the post for this preview show, which we'll put up on the No Nay Never Facebook page, and we will reveal the correct answer at the start of the next preview show. It's not Danny Ings.
Oh, what? It's not, is it not? Am I in the? Can we give our listeners a clue? Am I in the right era? Surely I am.
I'm not saying. I'm not saying.
Dave, you're
No
horrible.
clues.
Fine, okay, it's not Danny Ings. There you go, listeners. I gave you a bit of a clue this week just to give you the head up. That's a hard question. It's hard because I'm still reeling and mulling over the fact that we've only scored twice against Arsenal at Turf Moor, but never mind. Anyway, that is enough of that nonsense, and that is all we have time for this week. My thanks as ever go to producer Dave for knitting this together. I think we've had a few technical points this week with my horrendous cough and chest infection.
Producer Matt, even.
Producer, what did I call him?
Producer Dave.
Oh, God, my Lord. Okay. I'm not going to give poor producer Matt something else to have to edit out this week, because between a chest infection I'm struggling with and a cough and our technology going haywire, he's had to edit about 14 different versions of this week. So I'm going to suck it up and I'm going to let the listeners have that little blooper. And I'm going to say my thanks as ever go to producer Matt for knitting all of this chaotic preview show together. Matt, thank you very much. My biggest thanks as ever go to Statman Dave, because he just put so much effort into these preview shows, and honestly they're so much fun and I do love them. And thanks to special guest Dan Potts, who was our Arsenal fan this week and gave us his views of everything down at the Gooners. We will be back. We've got a break, haven't we, next week? Is it 2 weeks, Dave?
I have no idea.
When are we back with the pre-show? We're either going to be back next Friday or the Friday after. Who knows? Me and Dave for the previous show, and the main cast will be back on Tuesday for looking at the reaction to that Arsenal game and hopefully what will be 3 very valuable points towards our quest for survival. This has been the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.